All right, grade 9 math. You did section 9.1 for homework, which was on scatter plots. I realized late in the day when someone talked to me, I should have put number 3. You only had to do A and B, and I didn't. I just put number 3. So if you struggled with C, D, and E, sorry. But don't worry about them, okay? Don't worry about them. I'm never going to ask something like that on a test. So we are moving on to section 9.2. So in 9.1, they give you the scatter plot. You just have to look at it and interpret the data. What is it saying, all right? In section 9.2, they're going to want you to graph a scatter plot. So we're going to do that together from the activity on page 332 so that I can kind of talk through some of the things you need to think about. So we're going to do that and answer some of the questions down below, and then I will give you some to try at home. So when we draw a scatter plot, we're going to have an x-axis and a y-axis. And I said this yesterday, but I can't say it enough. I know I can't say it enough because every year people don't listen to me. And that is, your scatter plot needs to be big enough that if there's a pattern, you can see it. If you make it too small, all the dots just kind of jumble together, and if there is a pattern, you can't tell because they're all smushed together. You also don't want to make it too big because you don't want to be taping pieces of paper together to try and make it big enough for your graph, all right? So the scatter plot that they want us to draw in the activity is they talk about the fact that there are different prices on books in Canada versus the US. If you've ever bought a book, you should buy a book. Buy a book, read a book, be good. But if you ever buy a book, read a book, look at a book, down at the bottom corner, it will say the price in US and the price in Canada because they're different. US is almost always cheaper. So what they do is in the table that they give you the title of a book, and they tell you what is the price in Canadian dollars and what is the price in US dollars. We are going to draw a scatter plot for that. So how you go about doing this is usually whatever is in the first column, that's what I make my X. Whatever's in the second column, that's what I make my Y. So the first column is Canadian dollars, okay? The second column is US dollars. Now I'm going to need to figure out a scale for this. So how do I go about doing that? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to look at what is the lowest price in Canadian dollars in that list and what is the highest price in Canadian dollars in that list. So the lowest price looks like $1.50, and the highest price looks like it's $16.95, so almost $17. So do I make each square worth $1? That means I'm going to have to do 17 squares across. That seems like a lot, but you could. I would more likely probably do $1.50. So I'd probably do this as $1.50 because here is 0. Here would be $3. Here would be $4.50. Here would be $6. Here would be $7.50. And then the next one would be $9, and then $10.50, and then $12, and then $13.50, and then $15, and then $16.50, and then finally $18. All right, so Theoretically, those are even. They're the same because it's one square each. So I made each square worth $1.50. Now, what about the US? Because this side does not have to be the same as this side. It could be different. So the cheapest one looks like $1, and the most expensive one looks to be $13.95. So almost 14. So again, maybe you want to do $1.50, but maybe you only want to do $1 each because it's 14 squares. Up to you. I'm going to do $1.50 again. So $1.50, $3, $4.50, $6, $7.50, $9, $10.50. How far did I have to go? 14 was it? Yep. $10.50, and then $12, and then $13.50, and theoretically I would have more space than that, and I would do one more. All right, so then I'm going to put the dots on. So the first book in the column is The World's Most Amazing Puzzles. In Canada, it is $6.95, so almost $7. So it's going to be, I don't know, right about there somewhere. And it's an approximate. And in the States, it's $4.95, so almost $5. So again, it's going to be right about here somewhere, right about here somewhere. So that dot's going to go right about there. And again, it's an approximate. But if you put the dot way over here, that's a no. That doesn't make any sense. It needs to make sense where you have it. So Jurassic Park is $7.99, so like $8, which would be about here. So I'm just going to go up. And in the States, it's $6.99, so about $7, so about here. So that dot's going to be right about here. I don't want to have too many lines here going. I would use, on my page, I would use like a ruler or something like that, just so I can follow the lines. But on graph paper, you have lines anyway, so it's a little easier. The next one is $10.50 in Canada, so $10.50, so right here. But in the States, it's way cheaper. It's only $4.95, so almost $5. So right about here, but it's like $10.50 here. So it's like here. And you can keep this going. So $4.75 and $3.50, $4.75 and $3.50, right about there. $5.95 and $3.95, $5.95 and $3.95, so right about there. $6.99 and $5.99, $6.99 and $5.99, right about there. See, notice I'm just doing approximates. $12.95 and $10.95, so $12.95 and $10.95. Right about there. $5.75 and $3.50, $5.75 and $3.50. I don't know, right about there, maybe somewhere. $11.95 and $8.95. $11.95 would be 12 almost, and $8.95 would be almost 9. So I don't know, right about there. And $4.50 and $3.50, $4.50 and $3.50, right about there. $1.50 and $1, $1.50 and $1, right about there. $16.95 and $13.95. $16.95 would be about here, and $13.95 would be like way up here somewhere. I'm just going to put it right at the top of my graph. Should be a little bit higher, but I don't have higher. $11.95 and $9.95. $11.95 and $9.95. Right about there. And the last one, $3.99 and $2.99. $3.99 and $2.99, right about there. So now I have my scatter plot. Did it take time? Yes, it did. Will it take you time? It should. All right. So once you have the scatter plot done, then you can answer the questions that they ask. So in number 1, do the data in the table suggest a relationship between the prices of the books in Canadian dollars and in US dollars? Explain. And I would say yes. I would say that the more expensive books in Canada are also the more expensive books in the States. Does the scatter plot suggest a relationship between prices and the books? Well, yes, because you can actually see it when you draw a scatter plot, because as the Canadian dollar values increase, so do the US dollars, because the dots are headed up as I go across, which shows the relationship. As Canadian dollar prices increase, US dollar prices generally increase. Now again, you get some dots that don't really fit the pattern here, like this one's sort of sitting off on its own, but for the most part, there is a pattern in the dots, and when there's a pattern in the dots, that suggests a relationship. Now, in number 3, it says to compare US and Canadian prices for just one book, is it easier to use the scatter plot or the table? Well, if I'm looking for just one book, the table's probably easier because you go find that book and you compare it. And like, I don't know which book is which on this because it's a bunch of random dots. So if I'm looking for a specific book, I'd probably rather use the table. Again, these would be things I'd be getting you to normally answer. That was number 5. Oh, I missed 2. Describe any pattern. I missed, they go 1, 2, 3, 4. I was going down the column. Number 2, describe any pattern you see in the points on the scatter plot. Well, again, the pattern is as we move to the right, the dots go up. That would be the pattern, which would indicate that as Canadian dollar prices increase, so do US dollars. Do you find it easier to look for a relationship on a scatter plot or on a table? Well, I find it easier on a scatter plot because I can see the dots, I can see the pattern much more clearly. And that's their point, by the way. Number 6, you could label each point on the scatter plot with the name of the book. So in other words, I could write the name of the book beside whatever dot this represents. I could write the name of the book besides whatever dot this represents. It says, what are the advantages and disadvantages of doing this? Well, disadvantage, it's going to look awfully messy. It's going to be hard to see because if I write the title of this book here and the title of this book here, they're all going to run together. If you are not a neat person to begin with, it's going to make it very hard to be neat. So that's a disadvantage. An advantage would be if you were looking for a specific book, you could find it on the graph, right? Like common sense things. So that's pretty much it. Number 7 is not really an important question. So that's it. That's what you're going to do. So you're going to draw the scatter plot. You have to decide on the size of your scatter plot. What is each square going to be worth? You need to label it. If you notice, I labeled it. This is 1.5, this is 3, this is 4.5. You must label it. For those of you who don't like to label things, you must label it. Let me say that again. You must label it. You have to put, what is this axis? This axis is Canadian dollars. This axis is US dollars. And you're even supposed to put a title. The title for this would be Prices of Books, let's say US versus Canadian. Okay, that would be the title. Technically, the title should go like up here, right here somewhere. I'm not as much of a stickler for the title, but you have to label your axes. You have to label what each square is worth. If those aren't there, you don't get points. And then I'm going to look at where your dots are. If your dots do not make sense where they are, you don't get points. On the test, when I get you to draw a scatter plot, it's going to be worth a lot of points, because if you have to put 20 dots on there, there's a point for each dot. Plus, then there's also going to be points for, did you set up the graph right? Did you label your x-axis? Did you label your y-axis? Did you choose an appropriate size for your graph to be? Those are all things that I'm going to be looking for. So it's not hard to do, but it has to be done right. Okay, it has to be done right. Let me say that again. It has to be done right and carefully and neatly, for those of you who don't like to do things neatly. I'm one of them. I'm with you. But certain things you have to do in a specific way. This is one of them. All right? So I'm going to give you a little bit of homework to do, and not really a lot. And you have a nice long weekend. So enjoy your long weekend, and we'll see you next week.